Hello everyone. In today's video, I want to walk you through the recently announced student loan debt relief program or forgiveness program that was announced on August 24th. There's a lot of items in there to pay attention to, but what's getting the most attention is sort of the upfront forgiveness of either $10,000 or $20,000 of student loan principal on outstanding. So I want to go through sort of everything else that's in there too, and I'll give you a high-level overview. And then what I'll try to do is just answer what I feel are the top 10 questions I'm getting so far around the program. And then I'll post this out there on YouTube so you can check it out. And then as more details become available under the program, because there's still a few things that need to be ironed out, I can announce those to you in a future communication. So let's go to the overview here. So what we're talking about is student loan forgiveness of up to $20,000 per borrower. So the $20,000 limit is going to be for people who originally qualified for a Pell Grant when they took out their student loans in the beginning. For anyone else who has student loan debt outstanding but was not a Pell Grant recipient, the maximum principal forgiveness on their student loans will be $10,000. So you'll hear me sort of use those two dollar amounts interchangeably depending on sort of what area of the program we're talking about. They did also extend the student loan payment pause that's been in place through much of the pandemic. So they extended that out through December 31st, 2022. And that's going to allow them a lot of time to implement everything else that was in this relief program. So we're going to kind of get a total reset of student loan paydowns and forgiveness starting January 1st, 2023. There is a catch to all of this. So this is targeted relief. And whenever we mention targeted relief, it's usually going to be based on income levels. So what they've decided on here is the full forgiveness will be for individuals or single filers, tax filers, earning less than $125,000 per year, or households, basically married filing jointly couples earning less than $250,000 a year. They didn't announce exactly what line of the tax return they're going to be looking at for that, but our general assumption so far is it's going to be adjusted gross income, not taxable income. So adjusted gross income is usually the larger number because it's before your standard or itemized deductions. Another big piece of this program, I know what's getting a lot of the attention is the principal forgiveness, but they're also capping your monthly repayments going forward if you qualify based on income, where your monthly payment can now no longer be more than 5% of your monthly income. So I'll get into a little bit about how that's going to work, because I think that's going to benefit a lot of people as well, regardless if you get the upfront principal forgiveness or not. So let's start taking the questions, and I'll hit what I believe are the sort of the top 10 questions. Question number one, what loans are we talking about, right? So this is going to be any federal student loan that was initiated before July 1st, 2022. So we're not talking about loans that have been refinanced into private lenders, right? So if you don't owe the government your student loan back anymore, you kind of miss out on this program. So a lot of people tried to get into lower interest rate programs or to stretch out their payment terms with private lenders, and those private lenders just don't fall underneath this program because they're not the U.S. government. So a loss there for a lot of people who felt they were doing the right thing by trying to control their debt, but they won't qualify under this program. We did confirm that the program will include Parent Plus loans, right? So we're not just talking about student loans taken out in the student's name. This is on a per borrower basis. So we're talking about parents and student loans. So a big question we're getting is, what about current students, people still in college? Yes, right? So the program's going to cover current dependent students as long as they took out a student loan before July 1st, 2022. And if you're being claimed as a dependent on your parents' tax return because you're still in school, the forgiveness is going to be based on your parents' income, not the student's income. This covers all undergrad and graduate loans for accredited universities, including trade schools. There's been some confusion around what the maximum forgiveness is. It's going to be $20,000 is the maximum forgiveness if you are a Pell Grant recipient, $10,000 if you are a non-Pell Grant recipient. You can't combine the two, so no one's getting $30,000 of loans forgiven. It's going to be either or. You either qualify for the $20,000 max or the $10,000 max. And again, this is going to exclude loans held by the private lender, but the Department of Education is already sort of finding gray areas where people had taken out FFEL loans that sort of originate with private lenders but are intended to be government debt. So the Department of Education is trying to work those loans loans into the program so that they fall under this umbrella too. But that's still to be determined. They haven't sort of been able to announce that yet. Question number 2 is, what are these income limitation details? So as I mentioned before, we're talking about individuals or single filers, heads of household or married filing separate, earning less than $125,000 a year, which we believe to be AGI. Married couples filing jointly, earning less than $250,000 a year. So if you fall below either one of those thresholds, you'll qualify for some forgiveness here. And they're going to base the forgiveness on either the 2020 tax year or the 2021 tax year, right? So they'll look back at the last 2 years of tax returns you filed and see if either one of those income years falls below one of the thresholds, you will qualify. So we'll see where people land in either of those 2 years. If you want to get it sort of a sneak peek, you can look, sort of pull out your 2020, 2021 tax returns. I'm telling you to look for line 11 because I believe they're going to use adjusted gross income for this review to see who qualifies. So that's the key number you want to grab from either of those tax returns. Question number 3 is, can both parents and students qualify for forgiveness? And that's going to be a yes. So as long as they each meet the income criteria. So this forgiveness is being sort of delegated out on a per borrower basis, not on a per student basis. So whoever the primary borrower on these loans is going to be the person who's applying for forgiveness of the debt. So that means parents earning less than $250,000 filing jointly. If they have loans in their names, they'll be filing for some forgiveness. And likewise, the students who may have graduated and moved on, maybe they're single filers now and they have their own W-2 income, they're going to apply for forgiveness separately from their parents. So as a family, you can get up to $20,000 or even $40,000 worth of forgiveness based on whose names the loans are in. So dependent students, like I mentioned before, if you're still in school, being claimed as a dependent on your parents' tax return, they're going to base the forgiveness on the parental income. So you're going to want to look at the parents' tax returns for the 2020 and 2021 tax years. Question number 4, how does this new 5% repayment cap work? So this one hasn't gotten as much attention as the upfront forgiveness, but I think it's equally as large in the big scheme of how this program is going to work. So I'll just walk you through the criteria and then give you some examples so you can kind of get a head start on trying to figure out what your monthly payment might be starting in January of 2023. So the criteria for the 5% repayment cap program is going to be undergrad loans only, so you can't include your graduate loans in that particular program. But the key here is the monthly student loan repayment will be capped at 5% of discretionary income. So not total income, discretionary. So under the old income-based repayment program, it was 10% of your monthly income. So 5% is roughly half, and then they changed the definition of discretionary income. So that's been raised. So in most cases, especially if you're already on an income-based repayment plan, your monthly payment should be cut by more than half. So what they've done here is redefine discretionary income, and what they did was they raised it to a number equal to 225% of the federal poverty level. And I'll give you I have a table on the next slide that'll walk you through what that means. But borrowers are going to have to forward their annual tax return info to sort of reapply for that income-based repayment amount each year, and based on the income on that particular tax return, they're going to do some calculations to figure out what your monthly payments for the following year should be, and it's all going to be based on what your income was in the prior year. So let's take a look at how do you calculate that. The tables here on the screen have to do with, let's see, I have one for annual income, one for monthly income. Let's look at annual income because I think that's how most people think. So for a family of one, basically a single filer fresh out of school with a W-2 income, the first $30,577 is considered 225% of the federal poverty level for a single filer or a family of one, household of one. So your monthly student loan payment will be based on the excess above $30,577. So in a very simple example, let's say you make $42,500 a year, you're $12,000 over this 225% of the poverty threshold. They'll take that $12,000, multiply it by 5%, divide by 12, and that's your monthly payment. So some of these monthly payment amounts are coming in pretty low. You could read the rest of the table. You have to determine if you're a family or household of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So these are the key dollar amounts you want to be looking at on an annual income basis. If you want to try to make the calculations on a monthly basis, I'll give you that table too. But I think the first table here is the one you want to base your calculation on, because that's what the government's going to use to determine what your monthly payment should be. So a couple of examples here, right? So let's look at, let's say a nurse making $77,000 a year, married with 2 kids. When you do the table on the prior slide, that repayment's going to work out to be $61 a month on their undergrad loans. Currently, under the old program, where it's based on 10% of your annual income, that person would be paying $295 a month. So a person who switches from the old cap to the new cap is going to save $2,800 a year in student loan repayments. A public school teacher who's single, no kids, making $44,000 a year, that monthly payment's going to decrease from what's probably currently $197 a month to $56 a month, saving that person $1,700 a year. Let's say a construction worker, single, no kids, making $38,000 a year, they'll see their monthly payment decrease from $147 a month to $31 a month. So that's a $1,400 a year saving. So I think, once you get past the upfront principal forgiveness and start really digging into this repayment cap, there's some real savings here that are going to help people out for the rest of their student loan paying career. So whether you got this upfront forgiveness or not, or a combination of both, there's sort of more savings down the road as the program takes place. So we'll move on to question number 6. So what other improvements were made to the loan repayment program, or what other relief is in this announcement? One is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, the PSLF program. Right, so this looks at people in public service positions, really federal or state government jobs, military, or working for a qualifying nonprofit. They're going to see their loans forgiven at the end of a 10-year period where they've made 120 monthly payments. So whatever loan balance is outstanding at the end of 120 monthly payments gets forgiven at the end. So we're talking a lot about the upfront forgiveness in this announcement, but there's a lot going on the back end too. So there's back end forgiveness, and then forgiveness of interest during the repayment period too, which I'll get to in a second. The other area besides public service employees would be any borrower with an initial loan balance of $12,000 or less. Same thing. If they make 10 years of payments, 120 monthly payments, which could be capped based on income, whatever balance is left on their student loan at the end of that 10 years or 120 monthly payments will be forgiven at the end. So that's pretty strong. I think they picked this $12,000 amount in an attempt to sort of target community colleges. So they're trying to make community college available to anyone and everyone. This is one way to do it for the people who have already gone through the program, that if they continue to make their monthly payments, which could be based on income, it could be some of these low numbers that I mentioned before, whatever principal's outstanding at the end of 10 years will be forgiven. So at least there's a sort of a finish line for some people. I'm going to talk about this too, right? So unpaid monthly interest will not accrue on the portion of loan debt in excess of the borrower's 5% repayment cap, even if your monthly payment is 0. Right? So if we go back to that chart that I showed earlier, everyone's going to sort of calculate their repayment cap, where if that number comes out to be lower than what their stipulated monthly payment is, they can just pay the capped number. And what they're saying here is your balance won't go up if you just pay the minimum. So in a lot of cases, people with very large student loan debts outstanding, what they're saying is, hey, I make my monthly payment, but my balance goes up every month because the interest is so high. So what they're doing here is forgiving the interest over the course of the repayment period by running this calculation to say, hey, if you're at least making your monthly payments according to the repayment cap, your overall loan balance will not go up because of interest. So they'll cap that. If your monthly payment comes out to be 0, according to that, no interest is going to accrue on these loans. So it's pretty interesting how they worked out sort of upfront forgiveness, back-end forgiveness, and then trying to help reduce or limit the interest over the course of the repayment period by putting this caveat into the announcement. Question number 7 I had as, can I use my 2022 income to qualify for the $10,000 or $20,000 of forgiveness? And that's a no. So they're going to base this thing on 2020 and 2021. As I sit here today, it's August 30th. I do have clients who are on extension for their 2021 tax returns. They have until October 15th to file. So that particular crowd is going to have a decision to make before they file that tax return. Should they file jointly or separately to be able to take advantage of some of these income thresholds? So if you use the extreme example is, spouse one makes $200,000 and spouse two makes $50,000. Well, if we have one spouse making less than $125,000, that's where the threshold is. If that couple files separately, spouse number two is going to be able to get $10,000 or $20,000 of student loan debt, whereas the other spouse just makes too much. But if they had filed jointly, they're at $250,000 and they'd get nothing. So there's going to be some people in that boat between now and October 15th. Unfortunately, if you've already filed your 2020 or 2021 tax return, you're generally not allowed to amend your tax return to go back to change filing status. There's reasons you can amend a tax return, but that's not one of them. So anyone who's already filed, their fate is pretty much sealed. But I just say go back to those 2020 and 2021 tax returns to see if you do end up qualifying on that AGI line. Question number 8, can I take out a new student loan today and qualify for forgiveness? Sadly, that's also a no. So forgiveness is going to be limited to only loans that existed as of July 1st, 2022. So they had to draw the line somewhere, and they obviously don't want people running out and taking out new loans today and thinking they're going to get forgiven. So question number 9, this is a big one in my world, right? So will I pay tax on the amount of canceled debt? Generally, when you get to walk away from debt, whether it be a mortgage on a foreclosed home or a credit card debt, usually you'll see a tax form arrive the following January on a 1099-C for cancellation of debt. The answer to this question is no. So the government has instructed the Department of Education not to issue tax forms on 1099-C because this is intended not to be taxable income. So any forgiven balances under this program will not become taxable income to you on the following federal tax return. So I threw this extra bullet in here. There are a certain list of states that are not automatically conforming to all federal tax laws. So generally when something like this gets announced, each state has to sort of step forward and announce whether they're going to conform with this particular rule or not. In my area of the country, the two main states on that particular list are New York and Massachusetts. So I'll be keeping my ear close to the payment on that to see if New York decides to conform with that or Massachusetts decides to conform with this tax-free forgiveness. They could always elect to say, no, at the state level, we want to tax that forgiveness as income. I don't know why they would want to do that unless they really needed the money. My hunch is the states will go along and conform, but we really don't know until they make an announcement. Question number 10, this is the last one I'll go over, is how do I apply for forgiveness? That's a good one. So the Department of Education has to implement this announcement. So what they're targeting is setting up an application process to be available no later than December 31st, 2022. So we're hoping early December to mid-December, somewhere in that range, and then there's going to sort of be a rush for everyone to get their applications in. Otherwise, the pause will end at the end of December, and people have to start making repayments starting in January. So a lot of people are going to be in a sort of a last-minute rush to get their student loan debt forgiveness applications in December so that they'll know whether or not they will need to be making a January 2023 payment towards their student loans. They've promised this will be a simple application process. Anything government run, you just never know though. For any student loan debt borrowers that are already on an income-based repayment plan, an IBR, they already have your income data. So what they're saying there is they're probably just going to grant automatic relief, no application. They'll just forgive the 10 or 20,000 or whatever amount of debt you have outstanding automatically without the need to submit an application. If you have less than $10,000 in loans outstanding and you made any student loan repayments during the student loan payment pause period, basically the last year and a half, they're going to just refund the payments that you already made. Right? If you feel like, oh, just 3 months ago I paid off my student loans just to get them out of the way. That's all I had left. And I paid down the $5,000. I'm under these income thresholds. They're just going to send you a refund. So those two items will be sort of automatic, or that's the plan. Everyone else will have to apply and certify their income, which means going back to their tax return, making sure that the income falls below one of the thresholds and that the type of student loan that they have outstanding qualifies as an eligible loan. So that's what I have so far. I just wanted to walk you through that now, and I'll keep you posted on anything new or updates as things get implemented. I hope you have a good day. Thank you.